Let's talk about why you reach for the chips instead of the rice. Let's talk about ADHD, dopamine, and stim eating. The thing is, that thing where you're not hungry, you're not sad, you're not even really thinking about food. And somehow there you are standing at the pantry with a packet of chips open. That could actually be your brain asking for stimulation. And maybe food was just the fastest thing in reach. This episode today, we're going to follow on from last week's episode, which was kind of like an ADHD and binge eating 101. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, go back and, binge that one first. This week, what we're going to do is we're going to go deeper into something called stim eating. I'm going to go into that because honestly, this pattern just made so much sense to me when I looked back at my own history through the lens of a late ADHD diagnosis. So quick recap, I suspected I was a little neurospicy for a while. I thought that, it probably had something to do with my struggles with food. But the more that I learned about ADHD and eating, the more my whole history just really clicked into place and made sense why diets never stuck. It made sense why I could be so in control of everything else and just really lose the plot around food. All made sense in the context of that diagnosis. But I think something worth knowing before we go any further is that what works for a neurospicy or neurodiverse brain will also work for a neurotypical brain. Okay, not necessarily the other way around, but I didn't have a diagnosis when I built the breakup, my work, opened my clinic. I designed it though from my own lived experience and from what I saw as effective with my clients in that clinical practice. And so what I now know is what works for everyone and those with ADHD is because the approach is solid. So I just want you to know, if you're listening now and you don't have a diagnosis, but you suspect maybe you do, or maybe that's not your experience at all, episode today is still going to be really useful because if you've ever said, oh, I eat when I'm bored, or you find yourself with that empty packet and no memory of opening it, then we definitely have something to do. So I'm going to explain what is actually happening in your brain when you stim eat and why it is a little different from, say, emotional eating, even though sometimes we feel like they really get lumped together. We're also going to talk about my food freedom method and how it handles this type of eating specifically. And I have something really special to share today at the end. Something I've been quietly building for my ADHD besties. So stay until then and hear the last part because it's pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and get on into today's episode. Hey besties, welcome back to the potty. I'm Nic. I am a registered counsellor, a recovered binge eater, and as some of you know now, if you listened to the last episode, I'm also a late diagnosed ADHD woman who has spent most of her life kind of thinking that she was just bad at food, shit at food. And quick note before we start, this, as I said, is part 2 in the series. So if you haven't listened to that 101 episode yet, in that one, that's where I cover the basics of ADHD and binge eating. So go back, check that one out first because it's going to kind of set us up for everything we're chatting about today. So, and it's just last week's one, so go back to that. But today, what we're going to talk about and go really on a deep dive into is that stim eating, because I do think it doesn't get enough airtime, and yet it causes so much shame. It can be really confusing. But once this clicks for you, once you start to understand yourself a little better, you're going to have so much power and so much more control. Okay, so before we zoom in on that stim eating, I want to give a recap of the patterns that we covered last time because they do all feed into today's topic as well. So common traits of ADHD eaters are impulsive eating, so eating from that impulse, not hunger. The all or nothing thinking, so swinging between being perfectly on it and completely off rails. Food noise is really common, so that mental chitter chatter about food. Poor interoception, So that's where you genuinely really struggle to feel those hunger and fullness signals reliably, and a hyperfixation on rules followed by a total rebellion against them. Very common signals of a binge eater that are also very common with those with ADHD. And stim eating is another one of those traits that sits aside all of that kind of stuff. And I really want to dive into that one deeper because I think it deserves its own conversation. So first, let's talk about what stim eating actually is. So stim eating is eating for stimulation. So we're not eating because we're hungry. We're not eating for emotion. We're eating just for stimulation, because the thing is, your brain wants input, right? It wants that crunch. It wants the sweetness. It wants the texture, the ritual of unwrapping something. So food is going to give your brain a hit of sensory feedback and a small, or maybe big sometimes, dopamine reward. And an understimulated ADHD brain will be reaching for that constantly, and especially during really boring, repetitive, or low engagement tasks, right? Think about when you eat most. And this is different from emotional eating, because emotional eating is about their nervous system. We talk about that a lot on the podcast. The nervous system is trying to soothe a feeling. Stim eating isn't about soothing a feeling. It's sometimes there's no feeling there at all. You're not upset. Maybe you're not even really thinking. It's really is just that understimulated brain. And food meets that need. And I think this really matters because if you've been told to identify the emotion behind your eating, and then you go looking for one and you feel like you find nothing, you can't figure it out, you might then start to think, well, this doesn't work for me. There's something wrong with me. There isn't something wrong with you. It's just you're looking for the wrong thing. Sometimes there's not a big emotion to find. Sometimes it's just that your brain is asking to kind of be turned on. So where I see stim eating showing up most frequently, and I mean, this happens for my clients, but it also happens for me, shows up in three really common places. The first is where you're studying maybe or working on something that requires sustained focus, but it's just not interesting enough to hold your attention. So maybe that's scrolling on the couch at night. Maybe it's that, classic eating without tasting situation, or procrastination, because food ends up becoming the thing that you do instead of the task that you're avoiding. Or you feel like you can't start it until you've had that little snacky. Okay. And none of those have anything to do with being hungry, starving. None of those are I'm lonely. They're all I'm understimulated and my hands just need to do something so that my brain can pay attention. And when I really started doing the research into this and learning about this in my practice, wow, really made my past self make so much more sense. So my version of that before I had my diagnosis, which was actually only about 2 months ago now, I used to feel so ashamed. So when I was at uni, back in my binge eating days, I would start the assignment and hit a wall after like 20 minutes. And then I would find myself opening a packet of chippies. Don't even remember going to get the chippies or crisps, whatever you call them. And the thing was that as soon as I had my little snacky, magically, I'd be able to make progress on my assignment. And I used to think that meant because I just couldn't control myself, I was addicted to chips, that I had to have my little treaty in order to exchange for the stuff I didn't want to do. But it actually wasn't that. Once I understood it, once I actually knew why it was happening, I had so much more compassion for myself, because really my brain was being forced to do a task that it found boring, and it had found the fastest available source of stimulation so that I could actually get some shit done. So it had solved a problem, which is really interesting. But what's cool about that is, again, like when you start to lift a lot of that shame and guilt by having compassion for yourself and just knowing yourself, when you understand what's going on in your brain, then it's not a flaw in you personally. It's okay. So I think an interesting thing to note as well is that there are like specific foods that we reach for when we stimulate. I find it super interesting. So when you're stim eating, do you notice that you're not reaching for things like, steamed rice, veggies and stuff? You reach for things like chippies or sour lollies or something really fizzy or something spicy, something with a crunch, and there's a reason for that. It's not random. ADHD brains, it turns out, are running on a lower baseline of dopamine than a neurotypical brain. And I've done episodes on dopamine, so go back to those that are in the show notes. And when we seek out stimulation, we don't want something subtle, right? We want input that's going to be hard to ignore. And so the brain is essentially shopping for the strongest sensory signal that it can find. And of course, it always wants it fast. So crunchy foods are awesome for that because crunchy foods tick multiple boxes at once, right? There's a physical sensation in your mouth and jaw. There's that sound, the sound of the crunch. It is part of it. I mean, the crunch is auditory stimulation. And you're also getting, the physical in your mouth too. Your brain is getting that hit from two directions at once. And so it's getting twice the input. Perfect stimulation food. And how about things like sour or really bold flavors? I mean, sour in particular, my mouth's watering just saying the word sour. It creates this sharp sensory response that's really hard to miss, okay? It's activating a strong reaction across your whole mouth. And for a brain that is unstimulated, that jolt is really quite satisfying in a way that just having like a really mild flavor is not going to hit. Fizzy drinks. What about fizzy drinks, right? Kind of the same. That carbonation is creating a physical sensation that's impossible for you to ignore. So your brain is going to notice that immediately. And what do they all have in common, right? They all have in common is this intensity thing. So a neurotypical brain may be perfectly happy with a plain biscuit and you're done, right? But an ADHD brain may go for those sour lollies. And it's not because they're the greedy or the naughty food or a lack of control. And of course, there's multi-layers why we choose certain foods to binge on. But we'll just focus on the stim eating today. The reason you might choose the sour is because they deliver that much bigger hit of sensory information. And as you know, that was what your brain was going for. So the piece I want you to sit with, if you have spent years feeling out of control around these specific foods like chips, sour lollies, anything with a crunch or a kick, it's not that your brain was failing you, right? It was being very logical. It knew what it needed and it went out and it got it. So it wasn't a character problem. It was just that you haven't had better options along the way. Your brain found a way to meet its needs. And so that's actually what we would start to work on. Quick pause here, besties, because I want to share with you a free resource that might really, really help you. So if you're struggling with overeating, binges, emotional eating, or maybe food just feels like it has a little bit too much power over you, then I have created a free guide. It's called the Emotional Eater's Fix. So inside this guide, I'm breaking down some of the real reasons why this pattern has been happening. And I'm going to walk you through a few simple tools that you can start using straight away to shift your relationship with food and your body. It's totally free. You can just grab it through the link in the show notes. All right, let's jump back into the episode. How do we work on this? Let's talk about my food freedom method and how it actually addresses that, because this is where it connects to kind of the bigger framework that I teach. And stim eating sits inside what I call nervous system dysregulation or an unmet need. And that is the third root cause of binge eating in my work that I do alongside that physical and mental restriction, which is often like not eating enough, having strict diet rules, those kind of things. For most people, it's that they have an unmet emotional need. But for an ADHD brain, maybe the unmet need is the stimulation itself. So the fix, of course, is not going to be restricting or dieting, and it's not going to be forcing mindfulness either, actually, because your brain is asking for more input, not less. So how do we fix this? The fix is substitution and something called habituation. And inside the work that I do, we work on what I call a bit of a stimulation or dopamine menu. So you get a list of fast, accessible, non-food ways to get that same hit. So it could be something like gum, it could be fidget toy, music, short burst of movement, maybe something like, no, it doesn't sound appealing, but cold water on your hands or splashing it on the face. And then when we pair that up with bird surfing, when that urge to stimulate shows up, you've got a 4-step pause instead of automatically reaching for the food. And the goal as well, by the way, is it's never to not stim eat ever again, because I don't think that's realistic. And it's also not the point. The point is that I just want you to have some choice. Because if you eat the biscuit because you want the biscuit, it's totally different than eating it because your brain panicked and just wanted that stimulation and dopamine source. One of those, having the biggie or the cookie because you want it, is freedom of choice. And the other one is just like going on that autopilot. Now, I want to talk about something exciting I've got to share with you. And I've kind of been working on this for about the last 6 months. And if you have been in my world for a while, you know that I've actually spent about 2 years building what is genuinely something I know didn't exist before I made it. It was built because when I was in the thick of my own struggle, I looked around and I just couldn't find anything that resonated, really. And then when I started working as a clinician, I kept seeing the same gap for women like us. That gap of a safe space of tools that actually worked, that were delivered in a way that wasn't like stale and overly clinical and stuffy. So I just built this for the past version of me, but for you too. And in the process of building this, I've had to like learn marketing, website building. I've learned how to code. I've written a book and I had to learn how to pitch that and do a proposal. Got this podcast, editing it, setting it all up. I've been forcing myself into public speaking, which is not my favorite thing, but I'm doing it anyway. And I built this program and I had to figure out how to get it out there into the world. And so it's been 2 years of like massive wins, including being flown out to Hollywood by investors and securing an agent for my book. But also there's been a heck of a lot of crying in the shower and wanting to friggin' throw my laptop at the wall and some very expensive lessons in where to invest time and resources and who to trust. And building a business from nothing has been the best thing I've ever done, but also the absolute hardest. But I wouldn't change it. I do believe in this mission now more than ever, like now more than the start. But honestly, something that I keep noticing at the moment is what's still happening, or, the world has actually changed a lot in the last 2 years, right? Like, look what's happening out there. AI is just everywhere now. And you can get a chat box to give you a meal plan or a meditation script, or you could probably go on there and ask for a recovery roadmap to help you with binge eating, and it will spit one out for you in like 45 seconds. And I definitely use AI in my business, but what I keep hearing from women that I see in my community and in my DMs is that they're actually kind of drowning in information now. And what they are wanting or lacking for is actual human connection. So it's not really that they need more info or resources. It's that they don't want anything else they have to do on their own. They want someone in their corner who actually gets it. Not even because they have a degree or something like that. It's because they've lived it and they really, truly get it. And I think that's not something that AI can replicate, right? I mean, I have my lived experience as a binge eater. I'm also that late diagnosed ADHD woman, and I'm a recovered person who still has hard days when life gets shitty. And I think that's what makes this different. And when I tell you I know what it's like to eat in secret and feel completely out of control, I'm not saying that drawing just on research. I'm during all my life. And the women in my community kept showing me that, what they needed and where they were struggling. What they needed was that humanness, that real support from a person who has been exactly where you are and has got through it. And so that's why I built my program, The Breakup. That's what I felt like was missing. But I feel like I can do more. So I've been going back to the drawing board over the last 6 months or so, and I've really looked at what was working best for the woman I've been supporting, where the gaps might be, what I could do to give my clients an even more powerful experience. Because I'm in this for you girls. Like, I want you to get through this faster than I did. And the women who come to me are very often achieving goals in every area of their life, but this food and eating thing, your body image thing, just doesn't seem to budge. But they needed more accountability and more support with like motivation and, again, just like that human to human connection. And so I've been thinking about how can I make this more immersive, more connected, more higher touch. So the breakup has had a glow up, Bessie. So now it's going to be a 6-month live container for women who are done dieting. So it's for women who are done binging, done with that cycle that diet culture has put them in. And it's for women who are ready for real food freedom. What I've got here is within 90 days, you won't be binging. And by the time that we're done, when we hit that 6 months, you will have that beautiful foundation for a food freedom life, and it's actually going to hold. And so the woman that I'm calling into this space, they know something needs to change, right? I mean, the binges and the emotional eating after a stressful day, or just for a reason that they can't put their finger on, or there's food noise that you can't turn down, or a shame spiral after a really bad night with food, or maybe it's the diet that starts on Monday and is off the rails by Thursday. They're out of control feeling. And all of this in the face of being a woman who is just absolutely killing it in so many areas of her life. And it just doesn't add up, and you're tired. You're so tired of trying to figure it out. And so that's what the breakup is all about and has always been about. It's always been about breaking up those binges and the emotional eating with the shame, the guilt, food noise, and diet culture bullshit, of course. And when we've broken up with all of that, we put in food freedom in its place. But what I'm doing to elevate this experience is that I'm now going to be adding in weekly live hot seat coaching with me. You're also going to get an expanded curriculum with, there's going to be a whole bonus on ADHD and binging too. You get a community that you have for 6 months where you can ask me absolutely anything, anytime. And you get intimate monthly live workshops that are going to move with the seasons of the year and, what's happening at that. It's Easter, it's Christmas, we're getting our summer bodies. Let's do a workshop on them. And of course, you could do private support with me as well. I'll layer that in too. So it's not like watch the videos and hope for the best. It's very high touch. It's very personalized. And I have built this for us. So doors are going to be open from August. And if you're listening to this before then, get on the wait list. I have put a wee link in the show notes. And if it's past August, then you can come ahead and check it out. Enrollments will open each month and the numbers are going to be capped because, again, like coming back to this AI thing, right? I think humans are starting to lose connection with each other. I think it's so easy to have this feeling of mistrust. There's so many people on the internet trying to swindle us. There's people who claim they know all. There's people who say they're experts in things, but it's all just driven by AI and they're just like regurgitating shit that they've seen online. Or you can go down the rabbit holes yourself, but then you apply the tools and it doesn't work. But that's because you're missing that human to human piece, that community piece. Having someone who's lived and breathed it who can personalize the strategies for you, who can be your hype girl, who can be your therapist. So I think that is the difference. And that's what I'm going to start weaving in from August is this is the new elevated, highly immersive version of the breakup. And that's part of my journey of building this food freedom empire for us, of building a business that I know is truly of service and moves with the needs of our community as the world changes around us. So check it out in these show notes. And of course, DM me anytime if you have questions, because I'm always here to chat. And yes, it is me. It is not a bot when I reply to DMs. So let's wrap up today's episode and do a quick recap. I hope that this episode was helpful, and just know that if you have ever kind of stood in the kitchen with an empty packet and no memory of opening it, I really want you to hear this clearly. That is not a discipline problem. That is possibly a brain that needed stimulation and found it the fastest way that it could. And remember, you're not alone. Definitely not alone in this, especially if your brain runs the way that mine did. And by the way, this is not going to be the end of the series either. I'm going to keep bringing you more episodes on being neurospicy and working on our relationship with food and eating. So keep an eye out for those. And yeah, send me a DM if there's also any specific episode that you would like me to create, because I draw inspiration from you girls, what you're talking about online, what you send me in my DMs, what you post in the comments on the kind of podcast platform that you use. So let me know, because it is all for you. I hope that was awesome for you. I will catch you again next week. Bye, besties. All right, besties, that's a wrap for today. If you want to go deeper, check out the links in my show notes. You're going to find free resources, ways we can work together, and more details on my signature program, The Breakup. This is your roadmap to help you to break free from binge and emotional eating for good. If this episode has helped you, please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're feeling extra kind, leaving a quick review really helps this podcast to reach more women who need it. Take care of your beautiful self, bestie, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.